Good morning, everyone. My name is Rosales. I work for the Center of Educational Research at Universidad Valle of Guatemala. I'm going to deviate a little bit about one of the things that universities do, because I'll be focusing on when the university or the research center wins a grant to support a global education program. So let me dig into it. Our institution is implementing the Global Partnership for Education Fund in Guatemala through a project called Flexible Educational Trajectories. This project objective is to obtain evidence, so to do research, for scaling an educational model for out-of-school youth. And in this project, we work with a local organization as well as the Ministry of Education. And the local organization is called Grupo Ceiba. Ceiba, by the way, is the national tree of Guatemala. So it means a tree, but it's the name of the organization. And the organization implements its own model of alternative education for out-of-school youth. And it has received funds from the Ministry of Education since a decade ago. But we also work, like I said, with the Office of Alternative Education of the Ministry of Education. This office has shown interest in the model of Grupo Ceiba, and it's currently developing its own educational model, which will be a national model. So this is just to give you context of the project that the research center is implementing. So I will get to the AI, I promise, but this is a graphic picture of what we're doing. We are conducting 5 research studies, and we have 2 organizations that we work with. The top organization is the local small-scale organization, and the research studies questions are very about themselves. How good are they doing? But if we transfer that to up to a scale, you see that the questions are more about how do we solve a national problem. And our job is to help do the scaling up through research and through evidence. So we are like a bridge, sort of say. So, and I am going to focus on the 3rd study, which is called Fidelity of Implementation. So what is fidelity of implementation? All interventions in the world have a scalability potential, but the success of the educational innovation really is in the sustainable scalability that it has, in not just the small-scale results. But the fidelity of implementation is a way of guaranteeing that when you scale up, the implementation will maintain its quality or its original design. So, in fidelity of implementation, you can have 4 different dimensions of implementation. One could be about adherence, which, to make it simple, if you were doing a recipe, this would mean that you follow the recipe. Dosage means that you do the right amount in each ingredient. Quality means that it tastes good, it will be good food. And the response is what people think about your recipe. So transfer this to an educational innovation. That's what we mean by fidelity of implementation. Are we doing what we said we were going to do? And in our study, we focus on the quality of the implementation. And this is where the monitoring and the instrument comes, because to study fidelity of implementation of any project, you need an observation checklist or some kind of instrument that fits you or tells you that you are implementing your innovation the right way. To create the observation checklist for fidelity of implementation, we emphasize two methodological strategies. One is called DACUM, that I'm going to explain now, and the other one was AI. So let me go into one of each of them. DACUM stands for Developing of a Curriculum. We didn't create this. It was created in the United States, and it's a very popular method used for occupational analysis, or what they call job task analysis. So in universities of the United States mostly, people use them to develop the main core skills in any higher educational program. But it's also used in other things. For example, developing assessment or developing instruments. So what you do in this method is you come up with the main responsibilities and tasks of any profession or any job. Regarding the intervention that we want to scale up, we wanted to know, first of all, who was the main personnel that implements the intervention. In our case, because it's out-of-school youth, it would be the teacher of those youth that go to the alternative education program. So with the DACUM method, what we came up is, what exactly does a teacher do when attending out-of-school youth? And so when we play with those tasks that teachers do, we play with two terms, the complexity of a task and the difficulty of a task. So in any task, it could either be very complex to do, but very feasible. For instance, for a teacher, planning a learning experience can be very difficult, can be very complex, but it's feasible because it's something that they do all the time. There are other tasks that are very complex and not as feasible. For instance, what we've been listening this morning, designing a learning experience and using AI, right? That's complex and difficult. But there's other things teachers do, especially in international development. But for instance, taking attendance is not complex, but it has become very difficult. It's very burdensome. It provokes a lot of stress on them. So when you do the DACUM workshop, you play a lot with this. What exactly does a person do? But the outcome of the DACUM method is really a matrix where you have all the responsibilities of a facilitator or a teacher, and you also have the frequency or the importance of such tasks in each responsibility. And that in instrument development is called a table of specification. So this outcome of the DACUM method becomes the first step in an instrument development. It's the validity framework. It's what tells us that we're measuring what we were supposed to measure. This, in instrument development, it's one of the hardest things to do because it requires that you know the framework of what you're going to measure. So we solve that with the DACUM method, and then we have specification, which is how many items do you want to include? How are you going to measure it? Are you going to do it online? Are you going to do it on site? And then the next step is to develop an item bank. back in the day, which was like a year ago, you spent a lot of money developing an item bank because you needed to use a lot of experts to come up what you were going to measure. Nowadays, you can use AI. Then you go through a validation process, select the items, and you go to a field validation. So let me go into AI and tell you how we use it to do it quicker and do it more efficient. We used Google Gemini because it was what everyone had at that point. It was used to generate an exhaustive item bank of possible observation items. So what we wanted to Gemini to do was to come up with all the possibilities. This is the expensive part of when AI didn't exist. But we were very careful, and we trained AI by providing documents that came from the organization that were scaling up. So we provided models or regulatory models as inputs. We provided specifications for item writing structure. We provided the DACUM because it's our validation framework. And we also said, just go unlimited, do as many as you want. And it did. And it came up with 316 items. It doesn't sound much, but with all the specifications that we gave, it is a lot. And as you remember, in the matrix we did on the first step, we only needed 47. We ended up with 44. But we went through a validation process with human beings. So what we did was we went back of the model that we're trying to scale, and we asked them to do a validation session with all 316 items. So the experts went through the items, and what they had to answer was, is this something that teachers do in our alternative education program? And if the answer was yes, then we kept the item in the bank. After going through a human validation of what Gemini produced, then we went to a field validation, and we triangulated the items with 3 different participant groups, which were students, teachers, and inspectors. And then we went through psychometrics, and we tested if the items really fit the observation scale or the instrument. And what we found out is, by going through this process, we ended up with a very high reliability, which is good when you do an instrument. It's hard to get when you do it with humans. We also found out that the factor structure was okay. We had one dominant factor, and what we know is because teachers' tasks are mostly complex and are mostly difficult to perform. So the interrelation between all the tasks that teachers have to perform are fall into the same factor. So even though we have many responsibilities of teachers according to the DACUM, we still have one big factor. So teachers it's like art, you do a lot of things. But when we triangulated fidelity results, we apart that these might look high, because what we're saying here is that teachers among sites apply the model with Fidelity. What we're looking for here is consistency between all participants. This is good for instrument development as well, because you want to see when you apply it to different populations that they are similar. So as you see here, they're pretty similar. Coordinators deviate or the variance is a little bit higher because they had to evaluate more people than the rest. This is what I just said, but some conclusions about this study. First of all, implementation fidelity, it's a good foundation to scale a program. So if you were to transfer this to any other program, say you want to scale any of the AI initiatives that we've been looking at, look for fidelity of implementation because it will feed your argument that you could scale the program. Developing a curriculum, in this case, using this operational or this job task analysis or any other is also a good idea. And look for the specific tasks that whoever is going to implement an innovation have to do, because that will give you the specifics of the intervention that you have to target. AI it's valuable for item generation. If you're going to do a scale to if you're going to monitor an AI initiative, you probably want to have a monitoring instrument to see if everyone is doing it the way you wanted to do it. But always go back to the experts and ask them if they're doing what they're supposed to do and monitor that. And when following a process like this, psychometric analysis were up to standard. So we got what we wanted to get psychometrically by using the AI, but inputting something scientifically sustained, like a DACUM method that will provide with a matrix to tell you what exactly do you want to observe. So that's it for me. My colleagues are going to give you a copy of the brief that we developed, but I'm open for questions.